Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. On this video we're going numbers 310 to 301. So let's go to fighter 310 now. Okay, that fighter is Johnny King. Johnny King is a not often spoke of UK fighter. Okay, he beat one world champion. He fought 66 rounds against champions, and Johnny King beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 15 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And he had a total of 32 fights against rated fighters. Johnny King scored 74 knockouts in his career, 27 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 11 in the first round. Now Johnny King was top 10 rated for a total of 4 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 21 fights. Now Johnny King was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Good evening, Martin, good to see you. And he had 2 fights against pound for pounders, but scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories. And Johnny King had an opposition fought rate of 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 5 from 13. So Johnny King scored 6 fights against champions in total, with 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, with 2 knockouts. He had 1 fight against a Hall of Famer that was a defeat, and Johnny King had 0 world title fights. So on to our next fighter, 319. It is former light heavyweight champion Bob Moha. Now Bob Moha, okay, beat 4 world champions. He fought 187 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 208 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Bob Moha was a pre-rating era fighter, so he has a limited number of 9 fights against rated opponents. He scored 8 knockouts in his career, 3 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. And Bob Moha was top 10 rated for 0 years, being pre-rating era. His longest unbeaten run was a run of 15 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years. Now, to give you an idea of what his top 10 opponent run might look like, Bob Moha had 26 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 5 wins, with 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Bob Moha's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Moha had 17 fights against champions, including 4 wins, 12 losses, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. He had 21 fights against Hall of Fame fighters, including 3 wins, 17 losses, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. And Bob Moha had 2 world title fights, scoring 1 win with also 1 loss and 0 title defences. So from 309 we go to fighter 308, okay, and that fighter, pictured landing a hard left hook on Ezard Charles, is Violent Kid Elmer Ray. Now he took part in a brutish fight series with fellow big knockout puncher Obi Walker, another of the most feared heavyweights of the 30s, well, Obi Walker more 30s, etc. But Elmer Ray and Obi Walker, Elmer Ray lost a number more of the first fights and won more of the later fights in a punishing series. He was a very hard puncher. Now, Elmer Ray beat 3 world champions, okay, he fought 178 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 54 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Elmer Ray had 14 fights against rated fighters. Now, everybody wanted to get in the ring with Elmer Ray. He scored 71 knockouts, 71. He scored 43 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and he scored 11 knockouts in the first round. Now, Elmer Ray was top 10 rated for 4 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was a run of 50 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated. Ray did have 7 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 2 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Elmer Ray's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Elmer Ray had 19 fights against champions. That included 9 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, with 0 KOs. He had 6 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 0 KOs. And Elmer Ray had 0 world title fights. In his case, I'm not surprised. I can't imagine many champions who would want to get in with a powerful knockout puncher like Elmer Ray. Even Ezard Charles did and felt the sting to an extent. So, there's Elmer Ray in 308. Yep, Elmer Ray was a bad man, Bruce, indeed. And good shout out to you. Hope you're well. So, Elmer Ray's 308. When we go to fighter 307, okay, it's a fighter called Paddy DeMarco. Now, funnily enough, more people I talk to seem to know of Tony DeMarco and less of former champion Paddy DeMarco. Paddy DeMarco beat 3 world champions. He fought 114 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 79 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Paddy DeMarco had a total of 39 fights against rated fighters. He scored 8 knockouts in his career, 3 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. And Paddy DeMarco was top 10 rated for a total of 4 years. Now, he had the longest unbeaten run of 21 fights, and he was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 1 year. Now, Paddy DeMarco had 14 fights against pound for pounders, scored in 8 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Paddy DeMarco's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So DeMarco had 11 fights against champions. That includes 4 wins, 7 losses, no draws, with 0 knockouts. He had 7 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 4 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. And Paddy DeMarco had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, no draws, and 0 title defences. So there's Paddy DeMarco in 307. When we go to fight at 306, former bantamweight champion Abe Goldstein, who was a very good fighter as well, down at that lower weight in his time. Abe Goldstein beat 4 world champions. He fought 150 rounds against champions, and he also beat 4 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 116 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Abe Goldstein had 22 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 35 knockouts, 14 in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round. Now, Goldstein, crossing from the pre-rating era into the rating era, was only rated top 10 for 1 year, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 29 fights. Now, Goldstein was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 10 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Abe Goldstein's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Goldstein had 13 fights against champions, including 4 wins, 9 losses, no draws, with 0 knockouts. He had 10 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 6 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. And he had 4 title fights, including 3 wins, 1 loss, no draws, and 2 title defences. So there is former bantamweight champion Abe Goldstein in 306. When we go to fight at 305, okay, it's Ponsaklik Wonjonkam, a long reigning flyweight champion, okay, of the early 2000s, and he really did have some long reigns. Also, former lineal flyweight champion Ponsaklik Wonjonkam beat 8 world champions. He fought 108 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 0 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. Now, Wonjonkam, okay, had 17 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 47 knockouts. He had a large career for a modern fighter. 47 knockouts, 27 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 8 in the first round. Now, Wonjonkam was top 10 rated for a total of 11 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to a total of 57 fights. Now, Wonjonkam was pound for pound rated for 2 years, but he had no fights against pound for pound fighters, thus scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So, Ponsaklik Wonjonkam, okay, had 12 fights against champions, including 10 wins, 2 losses, no draws, with 4 knockouts. What's that, Martin? Ponsaklik Wonjonkam. I know, it's crazy name, isn't it? Thai fighter. Is he the greatest Thai fighter? Well, there's a few Thai fighters who, you know, got to that top level. I am considering revisiting some once the top 1000's done and my graph ring points videos are cracking on. I've just got clear videos of doing some top 10 by country videos. Now, only problem is a few years after that they're going to be out of date, but I am thinking of doing, I did some before, but just designing a basic slide and counting down top 10s by countries. But to do that, I want to get my new top 1000 finished, but that's another plan I have in works. I've got to fill up the channel with all kinds of crazy content before I consider me semi-retirement. So, one John Cam had 0 fights against Hall of Famers, and he had a massive title fight record of 24 world title fights. One John Cam won 20 of those with only 2 defeats and 2 draws, and Ponsaklik one John Cam made 20 title defences, okay. Multi-year world champion down at flyweight, and one of the best flyweights at 21st century. So there's one John Cam, okay, in 305. When we go to fight at 304, okay, he's a fighter again, not often spoke of, called Rene DeVos. Now Rene DeVos, okay, beat no world champions. Good evening, Paul, good to see you, buddy, hope you're well. He fought 20 rounds against champions, and he beat one Hall of Fame fighter individually, fighting 41 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Rene DeVos, okay, had 21 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 54 knockouts, 15 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 3 knockouts in the first round. Now, Rene DeVos was top 10 rated for 3 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 75 fights. Oh, Martin. Yeah, because you know when I've got all my graph playlist done and my top 1,000 done, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of career videos, and then a few other things I can do, and then I do a big top 1,000. I'm kind of, I don't know what I can really do after that. I could do then just leave the videos once I've got all the videos up on the channel and just do live streams and do deep dives on careers going year to year, talking about each year of a fighter's career. I'll do something, but the huge grinding work of pounding out 6 to 8 videos a week will be over. Okay, I will slow it down and probably just do live streams. I'll create probably a playlist of live streams, you know, and there's a lot of work to get done before then. I have to finish this top 1,000, do another top 1,000 in a few years' time, get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of career videos done, and finish some other things. So yeah, there's a lot of work before then. But at some point, I'm going to look at it and say, I can't really do any more. You know, there's career videos on everybody from 1890 to now, every major fighter pretty much. You know, I've done countdowns, top 1,000s. You know, I will fill the channel up, no doubt. But, you know, that's a decision I'll make much later. So Rene DeVos scored 54 knockouts, 15 in 3 rounds or less and 3 in the first round. He was top 10 rated for a total of 3 years, and Rene DeVos had a longest unbeaten run during his career of 75 fights. Now he was pound for pound rated for 1 year, and DeVos had 5 fights against pound for pound, scoring 2 wins. Both of those wins were against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Now Rene DeVos's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 5 from 13. So Rene DeVos, okay, had 2 fights against champions. Both of them are defeats. Oh, by the way, on a video, I'm not saying which video when it's a bit in distance, but I've hit my first double figures on opposition fought rate. I've hit my first 10. He had 5 fights against, just a random fact I dropped in there. Don't mean anything yet until I get to it. Rene DeVos had 5 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 3 loss, no draw with 0 KOs. And Rene DeVos, like many fighters on my top 1,000, I'll never hear arguments that Jamal Charlo was denied title shots. You know, blah, 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 blah. You know, so many of these fighters don't get title shots. There's been more than one on this video. Rene DeVos, Elmer Ray, etc. Crazy. And people moan about Charlo not getting one at one point. Right, so there's Rene DeVos at 304. Tough fighter, very good fighter, respected in his time. So to fight at 303, okay, it goes to a lightweight, and the lightweight who actually won the 1920s lightweight tournament, okay, Jimmy Goodrich. Not to me a Hall of Fame level fighter or a great elite great fighter, but a tough lightweight fighter. Jimmy Goodrich beat 2 world champions, okay, he fought 108 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter individually, fighting 75 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Jimmy Goodrich had a total of 38 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 12 knockouts, 5 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 knockout in the first round. Now Goodrich Goodrich was top 10 rated for a total of 3 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 17 fights. Now, Goodrich was pound for pound rated for 0 years. He had 8 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jimmy Goodrich's opposition fought rate comes in at 8 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Goodrich had 11 fights against champions. That includes 3 wins, 8 losses, no draws, with 1 knockout. He had 8 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 6 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And Goodrich had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, no draws, with 0 title defences. Yeah, Paul, the top 1,000 jazz musicians. I know nothing about jazz music at all. But, like I said, buddy, the thing about a top 1,000 is the key, so it doesn't become a headache of biblical, apocalyptic, universal-ending headache proportions, is you have to think, what makes jazz players great, and rate them against each other on that. You've got to come up with some kind of formula, and it's not a formula for your results, but a guide. That's what you need to do. That's a tough work. 1,000 jazz musicians, I couldn't even name 5. So that is a tough work. But it's tough to anybody who doesn't understand jazz, you see. That's the thing. So anyway, there's Jimmy Goodrich in 303 when we go to fight at 302. Okay, it's another tough fighter called Matty Baldwin. Now, Matty Baldwin beat 2 world champions. He fought 110 rounds against champions. And he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 174 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, Baldwin had 1 fight against rated fighters, but trust me, in a rating era, that would be way different. And he scored 28 knockouts, okay, 11 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Now, as a pre-rating era fighter, Baldwin was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 28 fights. Now, Baldwin was pound for pound rated for 0 years. He had 16 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Matty Baldwin's opposition fought rate comes in at 8 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So, Matty Baldwin, had 9 fights against champions, including 2 wins, 4 loss, 3 draw, with 0 KOs. He had 15 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 9 loss, 3 draw, with 0 KOs. And Matty Baldwin had 0 world title fights. So, there's 9 fighters down. Let us go to the final fighter now, number 301. And that fighter is a modern multi-weight champion who I think should be in the Hall, more than likely now. Jorge Arce, pictured with all his various world title belts across the multi-divisions he won them in. Now, to me, Jorge Arce is one of the standout lower weight fighters at modern era, along with Roman Gonzalez and some others. The excellent Jorge Arce, beat 15 individual champions. He fought 183 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, but did fight 11 rounds against a Hall of Famer. Now, as a lower weight fighter, Jorge Arce had 33 fights against rated fighters. He scored 49 knockouts in his career, 29 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 12 knockouts in the first round. Now, Arce was top 10 rated for a whole decade, equivalent of 10 years throughout his career, and his longest unbeaten run ran to 26 fights. Now, Arce was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings. He did come close a few years. He was in the top 15 in a number of years, but just didn't quite cross that boundary into top 10. But still an outstanding lower weight fighter. Jorge Arce had 3 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 0 wins in the 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate 2 from 13. Martin on the Hall of Fame material more than Firpo, definitely. Firpo never won a title, only had about 5 or 6 real major fights, Willard, Dempsey, Wills, lost a lot of them, fought some of the decent or good contenders, and that's it. And you've got Jorge Arce, a multi-weight, multi-time champion who's beat 15 champions himself, even though, there's more champions divisions now. But the fact that Arce has been on the docket to be voted in and hasn't been voted in yet is to me outrageous. But you know, it is what it is. So Jorge Arce, okay, has 26 fights against champions, 26, including 17 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, and he scored 14 knockouts against champions. I'm trying to think, has anyone beat that in the entire top 1,000 yet? That's a stat, even I don't know if anyone's beat that yet. Yeah, incredible number. So Arce had 1 fight against a Hall of Famer. That was a loss. And he had a massive 20 world title fights, including 14 wins, 6 losses, no draws, and 9 title defences across the multi-divisions he won world titles in. Look at him with all them belts. Look at that face. That's a happy face, as Jeremy Clarkson would say. So, there's Jorge Arce in 301, okay. So, now, people, we have covered 700 fighters in my top 1,000. Coming tomorrow will be 2 more videos, and then there'll be a day break, and then we'll launch into another surge of videos in the 4 to 5 days after that. And basically, you know, tomorrow we'll hit into the top 300, and then it's a push towards the top 200, which will come very quickly. I ain't actually got that many videos to get ready. I've got about 11. I'm going to get one of them ready now. But yeah, I'm getting closer, and we're officially going to go into top 300 tomorrow. So big shout out to all the guys in the chat. Good luck on your project, Paul. Get that motivation, mate. Get writing names down. Get thinking, right, what am I looking for? What makes a jazz musician great? And start scoring each person on how they've hit those targets, what you rate them on. And just go from there and start compiling a list. And then once you've compiled a list using your formula, i.e. your criteria, etc., then you can go into the list and move it around. But the formula or the criteria will give you a guide. And then you can play moving it around and arguing with yourself, right, why does he go above him? Why does he move up these 15 places or 30 places or 100 places, etc.? You know what I mean? But once you get the first draft there, you can play with that draft. That is your draft. Okay, and you just have to play with that until you think you've got it to a point where you're happy with it. So anyway, there's my latest video. Big shout out to everyone in the chat. Martin, Bruce, Paul. Great guys all here. Really appreciate every time you're around. And yeah, more videos coming tomorrow. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I did an Elmer Fudd. I'm the Boxing Librarian. Massive chunk on the home stretch. Yes, buddy. Massive chunk on home stretch. Sounds great, Bill. Thank you, Bill, mate. Yep. All you take care. I'm Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.